How do you stay calm when your wife laughs while her boss turns you into a joke in front of the whole company? Why would the same boss call the next morning with a shaking voice and ask why my name is on the company deed? What they thought was just a driver was the one detail they never bothered to check. My name is Colin Pierce. I am 44. For 5 years, I drove my wife's boss around the city like a shadow that never speaks. People saw the car. They saw the suits in the back seat. They did not see me as a person. I started this job because it was steady. I had done driving work before. I knew how to be calm in traffic. I knew how to plan routes, watch time, and keep my mouth shut. The company liked that. My wife liked that too, at least at first. Her boss was Grant Voss. He was the kind of man who filled a room without trying. He talked fast. He laughed loud. He touched people's shoulders like he owned the air around them. When he walked into places, staff moved first, then asked questions later. I learned early that he liked control more than comfort. My wife, Lila, worked close to him. She ran his schedule, his events, his meetings, and his problems. She wore nice clothes and moved like she had a purpose every second. She did not say she worked for him. She said she helped him win. In the beginning, I told myself it was fine. We were a team. She had her path. I had mine. I did not need applause. I needed peace. But the job had a strange shape. I was not part of the company, not really. I was always near it, but not inside it. I had a badge that opened some doors, but not all. I had a parking pass, but I was told to park in certain spots like I was an object that needed to stay out of sight. Most mornings I arrived before sunrise. I cleaned the car, I checked the tires, I filled the water bottles. I wiped the glass until it looked like there was no glass. I did this because it was my work, and because small details kept me safe. Then I drove to Voss Tower. The lobby was all stone and light. It smelled like clean flowers and expensive coffee. The security desk had 2 guards who wore suits better than I did. The receptionist sat behind a wide desk like a ship's bow. People came in with perfect hair and small smiles. I learned their faces. Many of them did not learn mine. They looked through me as if I was part of the building. Some nodded at the car and asked if Mr. Voss had arrived. Few asked how I was. If I spoke first, they answered like I had surprised them. Sometimes I stood near the elevator bank and waited. When I waited, I watched. I saw who rushed, who lingered, who lied with a smile, who smiled because they were afraid. I did not judge. I only noted. You can learn a lot when you are treated as invisible. That day was the same at first. I parked in the executive garage. I walked to the lobby. I checked my phone and my schedule. I had learned to keep my face still. A still face makes people careless. Lila came down around 8. She did not walk to me. She walked through me, then turned and spoke like she had just noticed me. She told me Mr. Voss wanted the car ready earlier than planned because he had added a stop. Her voice was clipped, like she was speaking to a service counter. I told her I understood. I asked if she wanted to ride with him. She said she would meet him later. She adjusted her hair in the reflection of the lobby glass. Then she walked away, without looking back. When Mr. Voss arrived, the air in the lobby changed. People straightened, some laughed too quickly. One guard opened the rope line like it was a curtain for a show. Mr. Voss did not look at me when he got into the car. He talked to his phone. He spoke about money and timing and pressure, as if the world was a machine and he was the hand on the lever. I drove him to a private gym first. I waited. He came back out with damp hair and a relaxed face. He talked again, louder this time, about someone who had disappointed him. He said that person should be grateful for the chance to be near him. He spoke like kindness was a prize he decided to give or not. I kept my eyes on the road. I did not react. After the gym, I drove him to the tower for a set of meetings. Then we went to a high-end lunch place. I stayed outside, reading traffic and watching people cross the street like moving pieces. Around mid-afternoon, Lila called. She said the company party was tonight. She said I needed to be there early. She said I should wear the dark suit, not the gray one. She said Mr. Voss wanted me near the car the whole night. I asked if she needed anything else. She said I should remember that this party mattered for her. She said it was not the time for mistakes. I told her I understood. The party was held at a rooftop venue downtown. The building had a private entrance and a long hallway that felt like a museum. The staff moved with quiet steps. The walls had art that looked simple, but probably cost more than my car. When I arrived, the sun was still up. The city light was soft. I parked in the assigned spot. I checked the car again. I wiped the door handles. I looked at my watch. I took a slow breath, the kind that keeps you steady. Soon the guests came. They arrived in waves, dressed in black and white and shining colors. Some held small bags with gifts. Some held phones like they were already filming. They laughed before they reached the door, like laughter was part of their outfit. Inside, music played low. Glasses clinked. People stood in clusters and leaned close to each other. Their smiles were sharp and quick. I stayed near the edge. That was my place. I was close enough to respond, but far enough to not be part of the picture. Lila arrived later. She looked like she belonged on the rooftop more than she belonged at our kitchen table. Her dress was simple, but it fit her well. Her hair was perfect. She walked straight to the main group, as if the room had been waiting for her. She saw me and did not come over. She only gave a small hand motion, like she was guiding a delivery. She wanted me to stay where I was. I stayed where I was. As the night grew, the roof became crowded. The city lights turned on below us. The wind smelled like warm concrete and perfume. People drank and talked and compared stories. Some laughed too loud. Some watched the important people and copied their gestures. I noticed how often Lila looked at Mr. Voss, not just for work. There was a pride in her face when he spoke, like his attention was a light and she wanted to stand inside it. Mr. Voss moved through the crowd like he owned it. He shook hands. He touched backs. He leaned in close to people and spoke in their ear. When he laughed, other people laughed a second later, like an echo. Then came the moment. Someone tapped a glass. The room turned. A toast was starting. People lifted their drinks. Phones rose a little higher. The music lowered. Mr. Voss stepped forward. He spoke about growth and vision and loyalty. He praised a few leaders. He praised Lila as well, calling her essential. She smiled wide and looked around to make sure others saw she was being praised. Then his eyes moved toward the edge where I stood. He pointed at me. He spoke in a playful tone. He said I was his driver. He said I was basically furniture. He said it like it was clever, like it was a harmless joke. The crowd reacted fast. Laughter rolled out. Some people clapped. Some looked at me and smiled like I was part of the show. Lila laughed too. She laughed louder than anyone near her. Her head tilted back. Her hand touched her chest like the joke had hit her in the best way. I felt something cold behind my ribs. Not rage, not heat, just a clean drop, like an elevator falling one floor. I kept my face neutral. I nodded once, as if I agreed with the label. I did not smile. I did not frown. I simply stood in place like I had been trained for it. Mr. Voss seemed pleased. He enjoyed how easy it was. He turned back to the crowd and continued his toast. I watched people's eyes. Some were mean, some were careless. Most were simply relieved it was not them. In that moment, I understood something simple. This was not about humor. This was about ranking. He wanted to show that he could turn a husband into a prop. He wanted to show that my wife would cheer for it. And he wanted everyone to see it. I did my job. I walked away from the crowd without rushing. I checked the car position. I checked the time. I kept my shoulders relaxed. I kept my steps even. Later, guests began to leave. The night air cooled. The city below looked distant and flat. Mr. Voss came down first. He spoke to someone behind him. He did not speak to me. He got into the back seat like he always did. Lila followed after. She slid into the seat beside him. She smelled like perfume and wine and rooftop wind. She was still glowing from the toast. As I drove, Mr. Voss talked about the party as if it had been a successful meeting. He said the team needed more loyalty. He said people should know their place. He said he liked a simple structure where everyone understood who mattered. Lila agreed. She added comments about branding and reputation. She spoke like she was part of his inner circle, not his employee. I drove with steady hands. I watched traffic. I listened to their words like someone listens to rain. It was not about the sound, it was about the pattern. When I dropped Mr. Voss at his building, he left without a thank you. Lila did not notice. She was checking messages on her phone. On the way home, she finally spoke to me like she remembered I existed. She told me the joke had been light and that I should not take things personally. She said important people joked like that. She said I needed to be easier, not so serious. I told her I understood. She asked why I was quiet. I told her I was tired. She accepted that answer because it was simple. She liked simple answers from me. At home, she went straight to the bathroom. She washed her hands and checked her face. She looked at herself in the mirror longer than she looked at me that whole night. I took off my suit jacket and hung it carefully. I placed my keys in the same bowl as always. I washed my hands. I stood at the sink and watched the water run, clear and steady. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator hum. Lila came into the kitchen and said tomorrow would be busy. She said Mr. Voss might need early pickup. She said I should set my alarm and be ready. I told her I would. Then she went to bed without asking how I felt, without asking if I was okay. I stayed in the kitchen a little longer. I looked at the dark window. I saw my own face reflected there, calm and flat. I did not cry. I did not shout. I did not break anything. I only stood still and listened to the quiet of the house, and I let the night settle into my memory like a file being placed into a drawer. In the morning after the rooftop party, the world looked normal. The sink still dripped once every few seconds. The street outside still had the same cracked line of pavement. My phone still showed the same calendar blocks. But inside me, something had shifted into a quiet, steady focus. I did not wake Lila. She slept on her side, facing away from me. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen down like it needed rest too. I went to the kitchen and made coffee the way I always did. 2 cups, one for me, one for her. I did it out of habit, not romance. When she came in, she moved fast, like she was late even in her own home. She took a sip and checked her messages. She did not mention the night, not at first. I asked if she had a good time. She said it was important for her career. She said the company needed unity, and the party helped that. She said people needed to learn how to laugh at themselves. I said I understood. She looked at me for a moment, like she was measuring my face. Then she told me I should not be so sensitive. She told me her boss used jokes to relax the room. She told me it was better to be included in a joke than ignored. I nodded. I kept my voice calm. I told her I was not upset. That was the truth in a strange way. I was not upset like a storm. I was not loud. I was not shaking. I felt something closer to clarity. Like I finally saw the shape of my life without fog. Lila left for work early. I watched her from the doorway as she walked to her car. She did not turn back. She did not wave. She had become a person who moved forward only. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and thought about how we got here. When I met her, she was different. She was ambitious, but still warm. She laughed in a simple way. She asked questions about my work and listened to the answers. She told me she liked that I did not talk too much. She said being calm felt safe. Back then, she worked at a smaller company. She was not close to the top. She was building her skills and chasing better roles. I drove delivery routes then, and I did some security work on weekends. It was not glamorous, but it was honest. I paid my bills, I stayed out of trouble, I took pride in being reliable. When we started dating, she told me she wanted stability. She said she did not want chaos. She said she liked that I did not compete with her. She said she wanted a partner, not a rival. I believed her. We married after 2 years. It was a small wedding. Nothing fancy. My mother cried. Her friends clapped politely. Her father shook my hand and told me to take care of her. I promised I would. At first, I did. I drove her to interviews. I helped her practice presentations. I listened to her talk through office politics late at night. I stayed calm when she panicked. I reminded her to eat, to sleep, to breathe. When she got the offer from Grant Voss's company, she acted like she had won a prize. She said it was the kind of place that changed a person's life. She said she finally had a real path. The company did not just hire her, it pulled her in. New clothes, new language, new friends, new habits. She started saying words like brand and optics and leverage. She started treating time like money and money like air. Grant Voss became the center of her work life. She spoke about him at dinner. She spoke about his standards, his taste, his vision. She said he was demanding, but fair. She said he rewarded loyalty. I tried to be supportive. I told her I was proud. I told her to keep learning. I told her to protect her health. She nodded, but she was not really with me anymore when she nodded. Her mind lived in meetings. Then the driving job appeared. It started as a favor. One day she called me and said her boss needed a temporary driver. She said the schedule had changed and the car service had failed. She asked if I could help, just for a week or 2. She said it would make her look good. I said yes. I drove Grant Voss to 2 meetings. I kept quiet. I kept the car clean. I planned the routes. He did not speak to me much, but he noticed the timing. He noticed the smooth stops. He noticed I did not add noise to his day. After the second day, Lila told me he asked about me. She said he wanted to know if I was trained. She said he liked that I did not try to act important. I remember that line, because it was the first time I felt my role shrink inside my own marriage. She said he liked that I did not try to act important. Like importance was a costume I could take off for comfort. The week became a month. The month became a contract. I became the driver, not the husband with another job. Lila told me it was smart. She said it paid well. She said it gave us access. She said people respected the Voss circle. At first, some people did. In restaurants, staff rushed to bring menus when the boss arrived. In buildings, doors opened without questions. In meetings, people stood up when he walked in. It was like the world bent around him. But the respect did not reach me. It stopped at the edge of his shadow. I was inside the movement, but outside the value. The first time I felt it clearly was in the tower lobby. I had been driving him for 3 months. A new receptionist asked me to wait by the side wall. She said the main area was for guests. She said staff should use the side corridor. I told her I understood. I moved without arguing. But I noticed how she said it. Calm, polite, and final. Like she was placing a box on a shelf. Later, I mentioned it to Lila. She told me not to make trouble. She said people in that building cared about appearance. She said it was better to blend in than stand out. She said my job was to be smooth. That word stayed with me. Smooth, it meant silent. It meant invisible. It meant easy to move around, like furniture. There were other small moments. One time, Grant Voss asked me to carry a heavy bag into a meeting space. The bag was not my role, but he asked in front of other people, and his voice made it sound like a test. So I carried it anyway. People watched. Nobody offered help. Another time, a junior executive pointed at me and asked if I was the valet. I told him I was the driver. He laughed as if those were the same thing. He called me by a different name, then walked away without correcting himself. At home, Lila started to mirror that tone. She did it slowly, like a habit forming. She stopped saying my name in public. When she introduced me, she said I drove for her boss. When someone asked what I used to do, she answered for me. She said I did driving work now. She said it like it was the whole story. If I tried to speak, she would touch my arm lightly and steer the conversation back to her work. She did not do it with anger. She did it with control. I made excuses for her. I told myself she was stressed. I told myself she was tired. I told myself success made people sharp at the edges. But it was not only stress. It was hunger. She wanted to belong to that world, and she thought I was a risk to her image. The change showed up in our routines. She started taking calls during dinner. She started leaving the table early to answer messages. She started planning weekends around company events, even when she said they were optional. She stopped asking me about my day. I did not fight. I tried to adjust. I cooked more. I cleaned more. I handled the bills and repairs. I told myself that quiet support was love, but the more I gave, the more my value became invisible. It is strange, but some people do not respect what comes easily from you. They treat it like a natural resource. At work, the pattern was the same. Grant Voss would speak about loyalty, but his loyalty went only upward toward his own pride. He treated people like tools. Useful tools got kept. Tools that pushed back got replaced. I noticed that the people around him copied him. They learned his habits and his tone. They learned to laugh when he laughed and to turn cold when he turned cold. It was like watching a weather system move through a room. The only place I felt normal was the coffee kiosk across the street from the tower. I went there some mornings when I had a long wait between pickups. The barista knew my order. She asked how my day was going and listened to my answer. She did not ask what my badge level was. She did not ask who I belonged to. One morning, as I stood near the kiosk window, I saw Lila walk out of the tower with 2 coworkers. They were laughing. She was holding her phone out, showing something on the screen. They looked at it, then looked at her, then laughed again. I did not know what they were laughing about. But I saw her face. It was not warm. It was proud, like she had performed well. A few minutes later, she walked back inside. She did not look across the street. If she saw me, she did not show it. That was when I understood that my presence was not a comfort to her anymore. It was a detail she tried to hide when it did not fit the picture. The week before the rooftop party, I had another moment that stayed with me. I was on the open plan office floor waiting for a schedule update. Lila was at her desk with a headset on. She looked busy and important. A few people stood nearby, talking in low voices. I stepped toward her to ask about timing, but I stopped when I heard my own name. One coworker asked if I was always around. Lila answered in a casual tone. She said I was dependable. She said I was safe. She said I was not the type to cause a problem. Then she said something that landed like a clean slap without sound. She said I could not really go anywhere. Her coworkers made small noises of agreement, like the point was obvious. They did not sound cruel. They sounded relaxed. They sounded certain. I stood still. I did not move closer. I did not interrupt. I waited until the conversation shifted. Then I stepped back and looked at my phone like nothing happened. In the elevator down to the garage, my reflection looked the same as always. Calm eyes, neutral mouth, straight posture. But inside, I filed that sentence away. She believed I could not go anywhere. She believed I was stuck. And because she believed it, she felt free to laugh at me in public. By the time the rooftop party happened, that belief was not new. It was just louder. And now, in the quiet morning light, with the coffee cooling in my cup, I understood the real problem. It was not one joke. It was years of training people to see me as an object, until even my wife joined in without thinking. The week after the rooftop party, I went back to the tower like nothing happened. That was the strange part. The same doors opened, the same lights shined on the marble floor, the same people smiled at the same people. The only thing that changed was my attention. I stopped trying to earn respect. I started watching how respect was given and taken. That Monday, my schedule looked normal on paper. Pick up Mr. Voss at 8, drive him to the tower. Wait. Midday meeting across town, dinner reservation later, simple blocks of time. But before 8, Lila called and told me the plan had changed. She said her boss wanted a different route. She said he wanted me to be ready for anything today. Her tone was firm, like she was warning a new employee, not talking to her husband. I told her I understood. I asked if she would be riding with him. She said she had meetings and would meet him later. Then she ended the call quickly. In the garage, the air smelled like oil and cold concrete. The lights buzzed. The executive spots were clean and wide. My spot was at the edge, near a pillar, like a reminder that I did not belong in the center. Mr. Voss arrived with 2 men from his inner circle. They were dressed in sharp suits. They spoke with easy confidence. They laughed like the world was a game they already won. Mr. Voss got into the back seat and started talking right away. He spoke about a new vendor and a problem with a contract. He did not say my name. He did not ask if I was ready. He spoke as if the car was a moving office and I was part of the machine. As we drove, he made calls and gave instructions. His tone was light, but his words were heavy. He told people to move meetings. He told people to handle issues. He told people not to disappoint him again. Each time, he ended with a laugh, as if he was being friendly. I watched the traffic and kept my hands steady. I listened without reacting. My calm made him careless. When we reached the tower, he did not leave the car right away. He asked me to wait. He kept speaking to his phone. Then, without looking at me, he told me he needed me upstairs after I parked. He said he had something for me to carry. It was not a request. It was an order. I said I understood. I parked the car and took the service elevator up. That elevator was quieter and smaller. The walls were plain. It smelled like cleaning solution. I had used it for years, and it always made the same point. There were 2 worlds in that building. One was for show, one was for work. I was part of the second one. On the open-plan office floor, people moved fast. Headsets, laptops, glass rooms with closed doors, voices low and sharp. Lila was at her desk with 2 coworkers beside her. She had a folder open and her phone in her hand. She looked busy, but also pleased, like she was performing in front of the right audience. Mr. Voss stood near a glass meeting room and waved me over. He pointed to a stack of boxes on a side table. They looked heavy. He told me to carry them down to the car. He said they were gifts for a client dinner. He said I needed to be careful and not damage them. Several people looked up. I felt their eyes on me, not in a kind way. More like they were checking if I would accept it. I told him I understood. I picked up the first box. One of the men near him smiled and said something about me being useful. His tone was playful, but it had a sharp edge. People around him chuckled softly. Lila heard it. She did not stop it. She did not look uncomfortable. She just smiled and kept turning pages in her folder, like this was normal. That was the first line that got crossed for me that day. Not the boxes, not the tasks. The fact that my wife heard the tone and still chose silence. I carried the boxes. I kept my face neutral. I took the service elevator back down. I placed the boxes in the trunk carefully and checked the straps. Then I waited. Later, Lila came down to the garage. She walked quickly, eyes on her phone. She stopped at the car, looked at the trunk, and asked if I had secured everything. I said I had. She told me to keep my posture steady at the client dinner. She said people watched small things. She said I should not look tired. She said her boss did not like messy energy. I asked her if she thought the rooftop joke was necessary. She froze for a second, like she did not expect me to mention it. Then she said it was a harmless moment. She said I should not take it personally. She said it helped the room relax. She said I should focus on being reliable. I told her I understood. She then added that her boss could replace drivers easily. She said there were agencies. She said there were younger men who would be happy to do the job. She said I was lucky to have steady work tied to her position. She said it as if she was giving advice. I felt that cold drop again behind my ribs. Still no heat, just clarity. I nodded. I said I understood. She walked away, already typing on her phone. That afternoon, Mr. Voss took a meeting in a private room off the executive floor. The door was glass, but it was frosted. I waited in the corridor like I always did. People passed by and spoke in low voices. I stayed still. At one point, the door opened a little. I could hear a slice of the conversation. Mr. Voss spoke about the tower and the company as if it was all one thing. He said the building was his base. He said the ground under it was part of his power. He said no one could tell him what to do in his own place. I did not move. I did not lean closer. I just listened. He then spoke about a clean story for the company. He talked about reputation and control. He said public image was everything. He said people who did not fit the image needed to be managed. One of the men with him laughed. He said some people were background and should stay background. Mr. Voss laughed too. I looked down at my phone and opened a notes app. I typed the date and time. I typed a few short words to describe what I heard. I kept it simple. I did not add feelings, only facts. After the meeting, Mr. Voss came out smiling. He walked toward the elevator without looking at me. Then he turned, as if he remembered I existed, and told me we had an extra stop. He said we needed to go to the bank. That surprised me. Usually, someone else handled his bank visits. But he was in a certain mood that day. He liked showing control with small dramatic moves. I told him I understood and followed. At the bank, he went inside with Lila. I waited in the car. Through the glass, I could see them at a desk. Mr. Voss leaned back like he was at a cafe. Lila leaned forward, focused, nodding quickly. She looked proud to be there beside him. When they returned, Mr. Voss spoke about how easy it was when people knew their place. He said the world worked best when everyone understood who owned what. I kept my eyes on the road. In the executive parking garage later that evening, I saw Omar, the security supervisor. He was near the camera control door, holding a small tablet. He looked at me, then looked away, then looked back again. He did not greet me loudly. He just gave a small nod. I nodded back. It was not friendship, it was recognition, like he understood the position I stood in and the way people use silence to push. That nod mattered more than it should have. It reminded me that not everyone in that building was blind. That night, when I finally returned home, Lila was not there yet. The house was quiet. The air felt flat, like the rooms were waiting. I went to my home office and sat down. I opened my laptop. I did not search the internet. I did not call anyone. I just organized my own thoughts. I wrote a timeline. I started with the rooftop party and the exact moment his finger pointed at me. I wrote the date and the location. I wrote who was present. I wrote what my wife did right after. I wrote the next morning conversation in the kitchen. I wrote the office floorbox task. I wrote Lila's words in the garage about replacing me. I wrote the parts of Mr. Voss's meeting I had overheard. I kept each note short. I used plain words. I did not decorate it with emotion. I treated it like work. When I finished, I stared at the screen for a long time. I felt calm, not numb, calm. I realized something simple. I had been trying to protect my marriage by staying quiet, but my silence did not protect anything. It only made it easier for them to step further. There was no dramatic moment, no shouting, no slammed doors. I just reached into the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a plain folder. It was not new. I had kept it for years, for practical reasons. Inside were documents from different parts of my life. Not secrets in a dramatic way, just papers that mattered. I did not open it yet. I placed it on the desk and lined it up with the edge, neat and square. Then I took out a small USB drive from a side compartment. I set it beside the folder. I sat there and listened to the house. I could hear the refrigerator hum. I could hear a car pass outside. I could hear the tick of a clock in the hallway. When Lila came home, she walked in talking about her day like nothing was wrong. She said her boss was excited about the client dinner. She said there might be a promotion soon. She said she was close to something big. She finally looked at me and asked why I was sitting in the office in the dark. I told her I was sorting personal files. She said I should not waste time on old papers. She said I should focus on being useful now. She said people did not get ahead by looking backward. I nodded. I told her I understood. She went to the kitchen to make tea. She did not look at the folder. She did not ask what I was doing. She did not worry. That was the point. She did not believe I could change anything. I stayed in the office after she went to bed. I did not open the folder. I did not plug in the USB drive. I just sat and let my mind settle. For the first time in years, I stopped thinking about how to keep everyone comfortable. I started thinking about how to move through the systems they respected, the way they moved through them every day. And in that quiet room, with my face still and my hands steady, I accepted a simple truth. They were not going to stop on their own. The next few days I moved like I always did, but with a different purpose. I still drove the same routes. I still held the door. I still arrived early. The difference was that I stopped trying to guess what they wanted from me emotionally. I only tracked what they did, when they did it, and how they framed it. On Tuesday, I got a message from the HR office. It was phrased like a friendly check-in. It said they wanted a quick conversation about workplace culture and recent events. It did not say my name in the subject line. It used my employee number. I did not panic. I did not celebrate. I treated it like a routine appointment. I parked the sedan in the garage and walked to the HR suite on the mid-level floor. The hallway there was quieter than the executive floor. The carpet was plain, the lighting was soft, the walls had posters about values and respect. The posters looked new, like they had been ordered to fill space. Renee Calder met me at the door. She was polite and careful. She spoke in a steady tone. She did not act shocked by anything. She asked me if I was comfortable. She offered water. She used a calm face that could hold any story without reacting. She told me there had been a complaint related to the rooftop party. She told me the company wanted to address it quickly before it became a bigger risk. She asked me how I experienced the event. I answered with plain facts. I said the CEO pointed at me during the toast and made a joke about my role. I said the room laughed. I said I did not respond. I said I returned to my duties. I kept my words short. Renee asked if I felt targeted or disrespected. I said the comment was public and it changed the way people treated me afterward. I said I noticed the effect, not just the moment. I said I wanted to understand what the company policy was for that kind of behavior. That was the first time I felt the balance shift slightly. People expect an emotional reaction. They expect a complaint or a plea. They do not expect someone to ask about policy language. Renee asked if I had proof. I said I had reason to believe several people recorded the toast because phones were raised. I said I did not know who had the clearest recording. I said HR would be able to locate it through internal channels if they chose to. Renee asked if I had spoken to anyone else about it. I said I had not. I said I preferred to handle things properly. Renee nodded and wrote notes. She told me the company took reputation seriously. She told me they wanted to avoid misunderstandings. She told me she would review the situation and follow up. I asked one more question. I asked what the process was if an employee felt their dignity was affected by a public statement from leadership. I said I wanted to know the steps, not argue about feelings. Renee did not answer in a dramatic way. She said there were standards of conduct, but outcomes depended on facts and on what leadership decided. She said HR could document concerns and recommend actions, but they were not the final decision maker. I told her I understood. When I left the HR suite, I did not feel relief. I felt information settle into place. The company cared about risk. HR cared about procedure. That meant if the facts were clean, the process could not be ignored forever. Back in the garage, I saw Omar near the camera control door again. He looked at me briefly, then looked away. He did not speak. He did not need to. In that building, silence was a language too. That afternoon, Lila texted me with a new schedule. Her message had no greeting. It listed times and addresses. At the end, she added a short note telling me to be on my best behavior because important clients would be present later in the week. I answered that I understood. The next morning, I went to the downtown bank branch. I did not walk in like I was part of Mr. Voss's world. I walked in like a normal man with a normal request. I took a number. I sat in a chair. I waited. While I waited, I looked around. People came in with envelopes and worry. People came in with hope. Money makes everyone quiet in the same way. A banker called my number and led me to a desk. I told her I needed account history information tied to certain recurring payments. I did not raise my voice. I did not act secretive. I asked for standard records, the kind a person could request if their name was connected to the right place. The banker asked routine questions. I answered them calmly. She told me what could be printed and what needed a formal request. She told me how long certain reports could take. She told me what identification was required. I thanked her. I took what she could provide. I noted what she said about the rest. I left without drama. From there, I went to the county records building. It was not impressive. It was fluorescent lights, old counters, and tired signs taped to walls. It smelled like paper and cleaning spray. People waited with folders and pens. A clerk called numbers and pointed to windows. I took a ticket and waited. When it was my turn, I asked for public filings related to a property tied to the company's headquarters address. I did not use the CEO's name. I used the address. That is how public records work. It is not about who talks the loudest. It is about what is recorded. The clerk asked which documents I wanted. I asked for copies of whatever was available in the most common categories. The clerk told me there would be fees per page. I told her that was fine. I paid and received a receipt. I was given a timeline for when copies would be ready. I thanked the clerk and walked out. Outside, the air felt colder than the lobby of the tower. The street noise sounded honest. No one cared who I was. No one cared what car I drove. That simplicity felt clean. On the way back, I stopped at the coffee kiosk across from Voss Tower. The barista recognized me. She asked how my week was going. I told her it was busy. I did not give her details. She handed me the cup and said she hoped my day stayed calm. Her words were simple, but they landed in my chest like something rare. It reminded me that basic respect exists, even when you are not powerful. When I returned to the tower, I kept working as if none of this was happening. I drove Mr. Voss to meetings. I opened doors. I kept time. Mr. Voss became more relaxed as the week went on. He joked more. He teased people more. He acted like the rooftop moment had proven something about his control. He mentioned loyalty again and again. He spoke about who was useful and who needed to be managed. He used those words like they were normal. I listened and noted. Lila matched his mood. She acted lighter, like she had been rewarded. She spoke to me in short instructions. She corrected small things in my appearance in front of others, like she wanted everyone to see she could direct me. She did it with a smile that never reached her eyes. At home, she talked about promotions and access. She talked about a new level of trust from her boss. She talked about the kind of life they were building at the company. When she said they, she did not mean us. I did not argue. I did not beg. I did not ask for reassurance. I stopped trying to earn warmth from someone who treated warmth like a tool. Instead, I worked quietly in my home office each night. I backed up messages. I saved schedule changes. I wrote dates and times. I kept my timeline clean. I created simple categories: party, work instructions, public comments, private comments, financial references, property references. I kept it all plain. I also made one call that week to a small law office downtown. It was not a dramatic call. It was a simple request for a consultation about workplace dignity, contracts, and potential conflicts of interest. Attorney Patel met me in a modest office with a worn rug and a shelf of binders. She did not smile too much. She did not act shocked. She asked me to explain what happened in order. I gave her the timeline with calm facts. I told her the CEO mocked me publicly. I told her the culture encouraged it. I told her my wife worked close to him and supported it. I told her I wanted to handle it within the system, not through drama. She asked me what I wanted as an outcome. I said I wanted to stop being treated as an object. I said I wanted boundaries and respect, even if that meant consequences for people who believed they could use me. I said I wanted it done the right way. Patel told me to keep collecting information and to avoid confrontations. She told me that when people feel safe, they talk too much and they leave patterns behind. She told me to document everything and to keep my emotions out of written communication. She told me that procedure works best when the facts are clean and the record is steady. I told her I understood. She also told me something that sounded simple, but was not. She told me that a calm person is often assumed to be harmless. She told me that assumption can be used. I left her office without feeling heavy. I felt organized. The next day, I received notice that the company was scheduling an off-site leadership strategy meeting at a hotel conference floor. Lila mentioned it at dinner like it was another badge of honor. She said it would be a big moment for the company and for her. I nodded and said I hoped it went well. Inside, I noted the date and time and the list of expected attendees. I did not smile. I did not frown. I simply added it to the timeline. By the end of that week, the people around Mr. Voss seemed even more confident. They laughed louder. They acted more careless. They treated my silence as proof that everything was fine. I kept driving. I kept listening. I kept my face neutral. At night, in my home office, I lined up the folder and the USB drive the same way each time, like a ritual. I did not open anything in front of Lila. I did not give her a reason to act cautious. I let her believe her own story, that I was stuck and harmless. And while she chased approval from the top, I built a record that did not depend on anyone's mood. The weekend before the off-site meeting arrived quietly. Lila treated it like a holiday that belonged to the company. She spent Friday night laying out clothes on the bed and checking her phone every few minutes. She talked about the hotel like it was a private world where only the important people were invited. She said the leadership team would be there, the board would be there, and the CEO would want everything to feel smooth. I listened and nodded. I kept my voice even. I did not challenge her excitement. I did not ask why she sounded more alive when she talked about them than when she talked about us. On Saturday morning, I did my normal routine. I cleaned the sedan, checked the tires, and restocked water. I moved slowly and carefully, the way I always did. When you are calm, people assume you are empty inside. They assume your mind is idle. That assumption can be useful. Lila watched me from the doorway at one point. She asked why I was being so thorough. I told her I wanted the car to be perfect because the week ahead was important for her. She smiled at that. She liked it when my effort could be framed as support for her status. It let her feel generous without changing her behavior. That afternoon, she went out to meet coworkers for what she called a quick planning drink. She came home later than she said she would. She was cheerful, but her cheer had a hard edge, like she was repeating a mood she learned in a group. She told me the CEO was excited. She told me the board wanted to see strong unity. She told me people who did not fit the vision would be moved aside. She said it like it was normal, like people were pieces on a board. I kept my face still and asked what time she needed to leave on Monday. She gave me the time and told me not to be late. She reminded me that hotel staff watched everything. She told me to stand straight and look respectful. I told her I understood. Later, when she went to bed, I stayed in my home office. I kept the light low. I opened my notebook and added a few new notes from what she said. I listed the phrases she used: unity, vision, moved aside. I wrote the date. I wrote the time. I wrote that it came from her, not from my guess. Then I made a set of short calls the next morning. I called Attorney Patel first. I kept the conversation brief. I asked if everything was ready on her end for the off-site week. She told me to keep doing what I was doing and to avoid any emotional conversations with Lila or with the CEO's team. She reminded me that facts are strongest when they are not mixed with drama. I called HR after that. I did not ask for an outcome. I asked for confirmation of the company process for documenting an incident connected to leadership conduct. Renee answered in a calm voice. She told me the company had steps and that everything needed to be reviewed. She said she could not promise actions, but she could promise that a record would exist. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I called a board contact I had met in a practical way months earlier. It was not a friendship, it was a professional connection, built through routine access, small favors, and quiet reliability. I had driven this person to and from the airport twice. I had learned that this person valued efficiency and disliked chaos. People like that do not respond to emotion. They respond to risk. I did not tell him a story. I told him there were facts related to company reputation that I believed the board should be aware of. I told him the facts were organized and could be reviewed in the proper setting. I did not mention my wife. I did not mention private life. I kept it within the walls of governance and procedure. He asked one question about timing. I told him it tied directly to the upcoming off-site meeting. He told me to send nothing by message. He told me to speak only in the correct room and in the correct format. That was all. I thanked him. After those calls, I felt no rush of victory. I felt a quiet tightening, like a seatbelt clicking into place. I was not planning a scene. I was preparing for a process. That week at work, the CEO and the executive team became more careless. Mr. Voss acted like the rooftop joke had been a public win. He teased people more openly. He pointed at staff in passing and labeled them with light words that carried heavy meaning. He spoke about loyalty as if it was a tax people owed him. He did it with a smile, so anyone who complained would look fragile. Lila mirrored him. She started using the same short laughs. She started correcting people in front of groups to show authority. She also corrected me more. She told me how to hold my hands while I waited. She told me where to stand. She told me to keep my eyes down when important people were talking nearby. One afternoon, she told me the off-site would be a turning point. She said the company was entering a new phase and the CEO wanted to tighten control. She said some people were going to be removed. She spoke with excitement, like being near a removal made her feel safer. I asked her if she ever worried about being treated the way she treated others. She looked at me with surprise. Then she laughed lightly and told me I was overthinking. She told me that winners do not waste time worrying about feelings. She told me I should be grateful that she brought me into a world where I could earn good money without being special. She said I did not need to be special. I only needed to be useful. I nodded and told her I understood. That night I slept on the couch. Not because we argued, there was no argument. I told her I had an early pickup and I wanted to avoid waking her. She accepted it without question. She liked anything that made her life easier. On the couch, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the house settle. I thought about how small the distance is between a marriage and a business arrangement when respect is removed. I did not feel sorry for myself. I only felt the last layer of confusion fall away. In the mornings leading up to the off-site, I started arriving even earlier than usual. I wanted no gaps, no mistakes, no reasons for anyone to frame me as unreliable. If the system was going to speak, my part needed to be clean. I also changed my habits in small ways that most people would not notice. I stopped leaving my phone on the kitchen counter. I kept it with me. I stopped answering Lila's quick questions with extra words. I answered only what was asked. I stopped reacting to her tone. I treated her tone like weather. By Thursday, the off-site details were final. The meeting was scheduled in a hotel conference space downtown. The agenda included leadership strategy, reputation planning, and what they called alignment. I knew that word. In that world, alignment often meant obedience. Lila was excited. She bought a new folder for her notes and a new pen. She told me not to embarrass her. She told me to stay out of the way unless she called for me. She told me to remember I was there because of her. I told her I understood. Friday night, she practiced a speech in front of the bathroom mirror. She did not ask me to listen. She did not ask for feedback. She only wanted to hear her own voice. When she came out, she told me she was close to a promotion. She said the CEO trusted her more than anyone. I asked her if trust like that had a cost. She told me the cost was effort, and she was willing to pay it. She told me I would not understand because I was not ambitious. I nodded and told her I understood. After she fell asleep, I went to my home office again. I looked at my organized notes. I looked at the clean labels. I looked at the dates and times. I checked that everything was consistent. I did not open anything that would make noise in the house. I did not print anything. I did not move like a man hiding secrets. I moved like a man preparing for work. Then I closed the laptop and sat still for a long time. I thought about the rooftop party. I thought about the finger pointed at me. I thought about my wife's laugh. I realized that the hardest part was not the public moment. The hardest part was seeing how easily people can erase someone once they decide that person has no power. I had power. They just did not bother to look for it. On Monday morning, I woke before my alarm. The air in the house felt heavy, like it knew the day mattered. I showered, shaved, and put on my dark suit. I made coffee, 1 cup this time, and drank it slowly. Lila came into the kitchen dressed for the offsite, looking sharp and bright. She told me to drive carefully and not take the highway if traffic was bad. She told me she wanted everything smooth. I told her I understood. We drove into the city with the sky still pale. The sedan moved quietly. The streets were damp from overnight mist. Lila checked her phone the whole way. When we reached the hotel, the entrance was already busy. Valets moved quickly. Staff held doors and smiled. Executives walked in with confident steps, holding badges and small cases. I saw familiar faces from the tower. I saw people who had laughed at the rooftop party. I saw people who had looked away. I parked where I was instructed and stepped out. I adjusted my jacket and straightened my cuffs. I did not rush. I did not hesitate. I moved with the same calm I always carried, only now it was not a shield. It was a tool. Lila walked ahead without waiting for me. She blended into the group like she had been rehearsing for it all her life. She did not look back. I followed at a respectful distance, passing through the lobby into the conference area. The carpet muffled footsteps. The air smelled like coffee and polished wood. I saw the meeting room doors. I saw the printed agenda signs on stands. I saw the way people gathered in clusters and laughed to show confidence. I took my place near the edge of the hallway, where I could see everything without being in the way. I watched the board chair arrive. I watched HR arrive with a folder held close to her side. I watched Mr. Voss arrive with a smile that looked easy. No one looked at me like I mattered. I kept my face neutral and waited, steady and silent, in the exact place they expected me to be. The board meeting started like a normal leadership session. Coffee cups, name cards, a projector screen with the company logo. People spoke in low voices and checked their phones one last time before the door closed. I stood near the wall at first, the place they expected me to stay. Mr. Voss sat at the front with the board chair and 2 senior board members. HR sat to the side with a notebook and a folder. Lila sat a few seats behind Mr. Voss, close enough to be seen as trusted. Mr. Voss opened with a confident tone. He spoke about vision, alignment, and growth. He spoke about how the company needed stronger control of its image. He framed everything like a plan that only he could lead. Then the board chair shifted the agenda. He said there were concerns about workplace culture and public perception. He said a video from the rooftop party had reached people outside the inner circle. He said leadership behavior had become a risk. Mr. Voss smiled like it was a small problem. He said it was a harmless moment. He said people laughed because it was light. He said the company could not be held back by fragile feelings. The board chair did not respond to the mood. He asked HR to summarize the concern in plain terms. Renee did it carefully. She said the CEO publicly singled out a staff member at a company event. She said the staff member's dignity was affected. She said there was a pattern of language that could create liability and damage reputation. Mr. Voss tried to control the room with humor. He pointed toward me and called me his driver again, as if repeating it would make it true in the only way that mattered. He framed me as background. He framed my presence as proof that he was generous. I stepped forward calmly and asked to be allowed to speak for myself. The room hesitated for a moment. People are trained to ignore a man like me in a room like that. But the board chair nodded once and told me to proceed. I said my full name. I said my role. I said I had worked the CEO's schedule for 5 years. I said the rooftop comment was not the first time my dignity was treated like a tool, but it was the first time it happened on a stage with phones recording. Mr. Voss tried to interrupt. The board chair raised one hand and asked him to let me finish. I then introduced Attorney Patel, who was waiting just outside the room. I said I had consulted her because I wanted to handle the situation through proper channels. I said I was not there to argue about emotion, I was there to present facts. The board chair allowed Patel to enter and sit beside me. That alone changed the air. People who had laughed at the party stopped smiling. People who had ignored me started watching my hands. Patel placed a folder on the table and asked the board chair for permission to provide documents for review. He agreed, but he asked for a clear connection to company governance and risk. Patel said the connection was direct. She said the company's headquarters property had an ownership structure that had been misunderstood inside leadership for years. She said this structure created a governance issue now, because leadership conduct and company reputation were linked to the property terms. Mr. Voss's smile tightened. Lila leaned forward slightly, like she did not like the direction. Patel opened the folder and handed the board chair a copy of a recorded deed and related filings from county records. She handed separate copies to 2 other board members. She did not hand anything to Mr. Voss. The board chair looked down and read. His face stayed controlled, but his eyes changed. He asked one short question in a calm tone, asking whether the name on the document was mine. I said it was. Mr. Voss spoke fast then, trying to take control back. He said there must be confusion. He said the company owned the building. He said his name should be the only one that mattered. Patel explained it step by step, like reading instructions. 5 years earlier, the company needed a fast close on the headquarters property during a tight financing window. There were timing problems and lender conditions. An outside structure was used to complete the closing. My name was used because I already had an entity and a clean financial pathway that met the lender's requirements at the time. The company signed a leaseback agreement and operational terms so the business could function without interruption. I added one detail, still calm. I said I did not force my way into anything. I was asked to help solve a time problem. I said I did it because it was legal, documented, and presented as a professional favor that would be respected. The board chair asked why the board had not been clearly informed. Patel answered that the documents existed and were public record, but internal leadership presented the story differently. She said the board was now seeing the exact recorded structure, not a story. Renee from HR looked down at her notes and stopped writing for a moment. She looked up again with a tighter focus. Mr. Voss's posture shifted. He sat forward, hands closer together, like he was bracing. His voice changed from playful to sharp. He asked how a driver could have his name on anything tied to the company. I said he was answering his own question. I said he treated me like a prop because it helped him feel safe. I said he never bothered to ask what my legal role was because he assumed I was too small to matter. Patel then placed a second set of papers in front of the board chair. This set included the lease terms, the conduct clause, and the notice that had been filed before the meeting. I did not describe the papers as a weapon. I described them as procedure. The board chair read again, slower this time. He asked Patel what the notice meant in practical terms. Patel said it meant the property terms had standards tied to conduct and reputational harm. She said the public mockery at a company event, combined with internal patterns documented through HR, created a clear trigger under the lease provisions. She said I had the legal right to enforce specific remedies and to require immediate board attention. Mr. Voss's face went pale. His hands moved to the edge of the table, gripping it lightly. He tried to speak, but his words came out uneven. Lila finally spoke, trying to redirect the conversation toward loyalty and marriage, as if that could soften it. The board chair stopped her and asked her a direct question about her involvement in the culture issue and her role in supporting leadership behavior. He asked her if she laughed at the rooftop comment. He asked her if she reinforced the pattern afterward. Lila's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Mr. Voss for guidance. He did not look back at her. He was watching the board. The board chair asked Renee to confirm whether HR had documentation connected to the incident and whether leadership had cooperated. Renee said she had notes, that the concern was documented, and that leadership had not treated it as a serious risk until it reached the board level. The room became quiet in a way I had never heard in that company. No music, no laughter, only paper moving and a projector fan humming. The board chair leaned back and said the company could not have a CEO who created reputational risk while also being careless with critical governance details. He said there would be immediate action. He said access and authority would be reviewed that day. He said there would be an interim leadership plan and a formal investigation. Mr. Voss tried to argue that he built the company. The board chair answered that building something did not excuse ignoring the rules that held it together. Then the board chair asked Mr. Voss to place his access badge on the table. Mr. Voss looked around as if someone might save him with a laugh. No one laughed. He looked at Lila. She stared down at her hands. He removed the badge slowly and placed it on the wood. The sound was small, but the meaning was heavy. The board chair nodded once and asked security to assist with the transition. Omar appeared at the door, calm and professional, as if he had been standing there the whole time. I did not raise my voice. I did not smile. I simply collected my folder, stepped back to the wall, and watched the room shift around a truth that had been recorded long before any of them cared to look.